and they cannot have a lifetime cap on care. This breeds individual responsibility. It makes sure that those who need coverage get coverage, and if you don't, then you face the consequences. And for those who can't pay on their own, it helps either with a Medicaid expansion or a personal tax subsidy. For example, I was doing some research on this, and I went to the Affordable Care Act's website. I wanted to find out what the care would be if I was a 27-year-old making $55,000 in Delaware County where I live. I found a plan, real good copays, very low deductible. After the tax subsidy, it costs $0 a month. I was effectively getting a free health care plan, thanks to the Affordable Care Act. Now, something else that really puzzles me about the Republican opposition is that this is their idea, through and through. The individual mandate was thought of by the Heritage Institution in 1989, and it's been endorsed by Newt Gingrich. Newt Gingrich, by any stretch of the imagination, is not a liberal or even a centrist.
That is 4 minutes. So? The Ivy College Republicans. And your time starts now.
Well, first, talk a little bit about the bill, the background of the bill. So the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare, was a $940 billion bill. It was intended to provide insurance and lower health care costs for Americans. The bill was passed along partisan lines with little input from Republicans. House Republicans had many ideas on health care, including tort reform, allowing insurance companies to compete across state lines, and allowing flexible spending accounts to continue at a higher cap. None of these ideas made it into the final bill because the Democrat leadership, Harry Reid in the Senate and Nancy Pelosi in the House, would not let the ideas into the bill. Tort reform would limit the amount of money awarded via frivolous lawsuits against hospitals and doctors, saving over $50 billion a year, $50 billion over a 10-year period, according to the CBO. It would also reduce the medical liability insurance and eliminate some of the threats of lawsuits that threatened doctors to prescribe unnecessary medical tests, and it would decrease healthcare costs and lower waiting room times. Allowing insurance companies to compete across state lines would increase competition and would allow the free market to drive down the price of insurance. It would also lead to cheaper premiums and, according to the Congressional Budget Office, save $12 billion over 7 years. Flexible spending accounts are programs that employers allow employees to put money into. These accounts are tax-free. Flexible spending accounts are often used to purchase prescription drugs or receive medical treatment, much like health savings accounts. Unfortunately, under the current law, the amount of money that can be put into a flexible spending account is capped at $2,500 per year. Hardly enough to cover a major incident if it were to arise. This is particularly troubling because a lot of families use flexible spending accounts to pay for health care for special needs children. By capping the amount at $2,500, this makes it more difficult. On top of that, if there's any money left in the account at the end of the year, you can't use it for the following year. So that money is essentially lost, and I'd like that to be eliminated if at all possible. The president, by not changing these rules, or by not putting some of these things into place, is hurting middle-class families. If you happen to do something dumb on New Year's Eve or close to the end of the year, and you get hurt, then you'd have to pay out of pocket or have your insurance pick up the tab. Over-the-counter drugs are also not included with the purchase, with being in a flexible spending account, which previous to the bill, you could purchase over-the-counter drugs with money that was in a flexible spending account. And this also doesn't take into the fact of all the taxes in this bill. There's a 2.3 medical device tax on all medical devices over $100. So essentially, those costs are going to be passed on to hospitals, and those costs are going to be passed down the line. Devin Herrick, a senior analyst at the National Center for Policy Analysis, believes there won't be enough doctors to treat all the new enrollees. He says Medicare physician fees are going to be cut because of this.
And
And-
that is 4 minutes. Okay. Now we are moving into the rebuttal portion. If you would like to applaud. Equal treatment. Now we are moving into the rebuttal portion. The Democrats will go first, and your time starts now.
Justin, I would definitely like to see where you got those sources from. From sitting over here, they sound like all pros. They sound like common sense. For folks that know the background and the Affordable Health Care Act, which is known as the Obamacare Act, the Health Care Act, it's like having car insurance. It's for the what ifs. In case you do go out on a party and you end up getting injured, or you end up walking down the street on the sidewalk and you happen to slip. Talk about taking responsibility is having insurance that's affordable. The reason why we have the Affordable Care Act is to be able to level out the what I call the monopoly that's been in the system for over the past 50 years. And those are the 1%ers that have had control over healthcare. And coming from a community where I've seen individuals be turned down because they simply couldn't afford healthcare because they didn't have enough income to pay for those prescription drugs. This only seems like a logic, common sense that we would have something in place, a government that is entering into the free market and leveling out the playing field. So folks like you and I can afford health care. In addition to that, one of the things that the Democratic Party has done, predominantly speaking on behalf of Obama, is that he has extended health care for young folks up until the age of 26.
And those 2 minutes. The Ivy Republicans, your time.
Yeah, first I want to continue on a couple more points. This is 1/6 of our economy, so comparing it to car insurance, I think, is a little bit ridiculous in my opinion. Car insurance is very different than healthcare, so this is a huge issue. I mean, 1/6 of the economy is not, you're not talking about cars there. But I also want to continue on my opening point here. Goes on to say that the Medicare physician fees will be cut below Medicaid fees, so Medicaid enrollees will have a hard time finding doctors. And this website, we've had this healthcare website in place for several months, and people have been trying to go on to sign up for this, and they can't do it. So I mean, you guys have 4 years to implement this bill, but you guys, I mean, Sebelius couldn't even run our website. I mean, and she's gone now. She got fired last week. So I think it's.
I'm sorry, she did not get fired. She stepped down from that position.
Well, she actually just admitted yesterday that she was
She
forced to
stepped
resign.
down. She stepped
And actually,
down.
this is my rebuttal, so I appreciate it.
Well,
I can have
as
my
long as you
rebuttal.
can give accurate and true information,
I'll get the article.
I'll let you have your 2 minutes.
All right, thank you. All right. And also, so yeah, there's been a lot of problems with signing up for the bill because the website's been down and hasn't been efficiently run. And this is it was a $537 million system. So I don't. I think it should be better. That the government should be able to run a site a little bit better than that. So and some conservative alternatives that would propose to this, like I mentioned earlier, the tort reform and allowing insurance companies to compete across state lines, I think would be highly effective for this bill.
Okay. So, now we move into our closing statements. The Democrats and the Republicans will each have 1 minute and 30 seconds to close out their arguments and summarize what they feel on leaning toward this issue. College Democrats.
I feel like that the Republicans are missing the point of Obamacare. Sorry about that. We're missing the point of Obamacare or the Affordable Care Act. The point is to make it more affordable. That's the whole intention of we as a democratic nation. We want to be able to provide opportunities for the lower income families. Now, if you look at the Affordable Care Act, it went from covering 100% of the low federal income people to 133%. It's taking money away from, it's taking power away from these insurance companies, because I know y'all like competition, but competition is the reason why we were in the hole that we're in. Now it's taking the competition away, it's putting the government in the middle. Now the government is fully funding new eligible adults for the next 3 years, and then 3 years after that, they'll be funding 90% of it. The point of the Affordable Care Act is to provide opportunities. As a nation, our intention is to give people the opportunity to pursue happiness, to pursue it for them. And that's our job. That is the main intention, that is our job. And actually, if you look, you can sign up right now for the Affordable Care Act, because we actually, part of the bill is to install new buildings whose sole purpose is to process these applications. The applications have been down to 1 page. So you can look it up for yourself. The facts are here. The competition amongst these insurance companies are hurting the middle class family. Forget about saving money. We need to start dwindling down this money because of low income.
1 minute and 30 seconds. And now the closing statements for the Republicans. Your time starts now.
If you want to talk about hurting middle-class families, I can go back to my earlier point where I mentioned probably 3 times now that the Medicare physician fees be cut below the Medicaid levels. So people that are on Medicaid are going to have trouble finding doctors. So essentially, you're throwing middle-class families under the bus, the way I look at it with that. Also, the president made a statement that if you like your plan, if you like your current health care plan, you can keep it. He made that statement, and PolitiFact rated that statement as the lie of the year. They said that it was completely false, and 4 million people realized that they couldn't keep their insurance. They got letters in the mail that said you would not be able to keep your insurance. So essentially, it threw 4 million people off the insurance rolls. And those numbers are just an estimate. Those numbers could be higher than that as well. So, I mean, when you have the president saying something, I think it's important, that he gets good advice from his advisors, because obviously, that was completely ridiculous. That 4 million people are thrown off and then have to go fend for themselves when it comes to health insurance.
Okay. With 3 seconds left, that concludes the closing statements. I've received 1 question from a Brad Mortensen, who asked, do the alternatives proposed provide universal service? I assume that is directed towards the Republicans, as the alternative to, it would be the alternative to the Affordable Care Act.
I'm sorry.
The question again is, do the alternatives proposed provide universal service? And you have 2 minutes.
I'm not entirely sure what the alternatives proposed would provide universal service. Like I said earlier, I want to keep those things. The tort reform, I want that in the bill. I want the allowing insurance companies to compete across state lines, because it would open up competition and it would drive down costs. And that would drive down costs for consumers. That would drive down costs for people that are trying to get health care. So that's a good thing, and I don't know why in the first place that wasn't put into place. In terms of universal coverage, in terms of what I personally believe, I don't believe in a universal health care plan. believe that, we need, some kind of plan, but I believe that we should restructure the plans that we already have in place for Medicare and Medicaid, and we should look to reform them before we look to tackle the whole healthcare issue in one step.
Okay. I do not see any other questions. Just a reminder, the hashtag is IUP debate, and I'm monitoring that real time. If you would like some analysis, Jake Williams is tweeting live, quotes and such. So if you want some, play-by-play, you can follow him at Jake Williams DC, and he's using up my entire feed of IUP debates. So, moving on to the next question. This will be started by the opening statement of the IUP College Republicans, and the topic is the extraction of natural gas in Pennsylvania. So, should Pennsylvania allow the extraction of natural gas? If so, should there be limits on the methods used? Why? If not, should the state or federal government have a role in monitoring land use rights? College Republicans, your time starts now.
I don't think there's a question on whether Pennsylvania should allow the extraction of natural gas. Natural gas is the cleanest and biggest job creator of all the different types of energy out there right now. We are blessed to have our state sitting on the Marcellus Shale. In Pennsylvania, jobs from the natural gas industry pay $62,000 on average, nearly $18,000 to almost $25,000 more than the state average. By 2020, full development of the Marcellus Shale could support more than 211,000 Pennsylvania fracking jobs. In 2010, Pennsylvania Marcellus natural gas development generated $11.2 billion in value added, or the regional equivalent of $1.1 billion in state and local tax revenues, and supported nearly 140,000 jobs. This economic impact is huge to the state as well as the country, and will push us forward to energy independence in the future. We won't have to worry about being dictated by foreign prices anymore. Robert W. Watson, an associate professor at Penn State, stated, "The Marcellus Shale development promises enormous economic benefits to Pennsylvania and raises important environmental, economic, and land use issues that should be robustly debated. But such development is not new. It is not unproven, it is not unsafe." Which leads me to the next question. Every industry is regulated to prevent a multitude of things. The natural gas industry is regulated under many laws here in the state, including the Oil and Gas Act, Coal and Gas Resource Coordination Act, and Oil and Gas Conservation Law. The environmental protection laws, which include the Clean Streams Law, the Dam Safety and Encroachment Act, the Solid Waste Management Act, and the Water Resources Planning Act. There's many, many more regulations and permits that natural gas companies must go through before they can actually do anything that's safe. The actual process takes about 2 to 3 years before they can actually start doing development on the site where they want to do the initial drilling. Increased use of natural gas has allowed the U.S. to reduce carbon dioxide emissions to their lowest level since 1992. In those 20 years, we have been able to reduce emissions while the economy has grown 60% and energy consumption has grown by 14%. In fact, geothermal energy is what people should be looking where most of the materials are being produced in China, and it uses tons of rare earth resources like copper. It's just terrible for China as well as the U.S. and the fact that it's destroying carbon dioxide. Well, not destroying, but increasing the levels of carbon dioxide. So someone might say, oh, but my water's not drinkable with all the methane from the drilling. The water is clean. Naturally occurring methane is in water and comes up to the surface through a process of methane migration, which is a naturally occurring process. The State Environmental Protection Agency Department and U.S. Department has only found clean drinking water in their studies. No direct relationship between fracking and bad water has ever been found. So with that, and the fact that 81% of electricity producers are turning to natural gas, means we should regulate the so-called fracking process as little as possible so that more money can be flown throughout the economy. And now to land use rights. I believe that it should be up to the local communities when it comes to the questions of land use rights. It's their community and their property, not the federal and state government. Landowners have the right to allow companies to drill in their land for a royalty payment of 1/8 of their gross production involving oil and gas, as well as a cash payment or a combination of both. Now this can change as much as the landowner wants to because it's a contract. so he can get more for his royalty payment if he wants to. It's all based upon that relationship between the company and the landowner. The state and federal government can only hurt the communities by taking control over the issue. In Wayne County, Pennsylvania, in the northeast corner.
Okay, that's 4 minutes. Great. And now the College Democrats, your time starts now. I just reset the clock.
Alright, thank you. I don't believe there should be any natural gas drilling in the state of Pennsylvania. Because basically what fracking is, it's a smashing of rock with gallons of water, and it's mixed with this chemical. No one knows what's in the chemical, and then sometimes when they do this smashing, the chemical mixes in with the groundwater, which a lot of people, especially in rural areas, use to drink from their wells. And this has many harmful effects to the people. And the fracking contaminates groundwater, and then it makes it undrinkable. Like, you've heard stories about how people could catch their water on fire, and there have been over 1,000 documented cases of water contamination near fracking sites. And other concerns to natural gas fracking is the harm to the environment. It has been shown to cause, there's a risk for explosions and earthquakes because of the vibrations caused by the fracking process. It can also impact climate change, and it can cause acid rain from the waste fluid. About 30% is left in the ground, and that evaporates into the air, and it can cause acid rain, which is very devastating to the environment. Now, let's get focused back on the people who are hurt a lot of times by this. Most of the time it's their drinking water, and it can also be accidents on the site, on the drilling site. There was one family in Washington County who lost their family dog and goat because of natural gas fracking near their home. And 2 of their kids had stomach pains, nausea, fatigue, and mouth ulcers. These cases are all too common when it comes to natural gas. And another family had livestock die, which they depend on for their business, farming, and they suffered themselves from headaches, breathing difficulties, vomiting, nosebleeds, and even one member had a blood cancer. And there have been reports of higher rates of cancer in people living near natural gas fracking sites. And now yes, it can create jobs, but is it really worth it to have all these risks associated with it? Because natural gas fracking isn't a safe industry. No matter how much regulation you have, there's still always going to be risks, and it's potential for human lives to be lost, like if an earthquake, explosion, or just a contamination of water. Now, I don't believe human lives are worth the risk just so we can have more jobs and more money to the state, because we'd also be paying for cleanup if natural gas or natural disaster happens, and compensation to families when the government buys their land. And regulation in general can be very expensive, and I don't think any amount of regulation will make fracking totally safe. There's always going to be dangers, because there's always risks involved, just because. And another point I wanted to make is natural gas extraction is a short-term thing. It's kind of like the steel industry. Like, everyone was booming, but then I forget the number of years, but then it died and then people were left destitute. I think we should focus on green energy, which is renewable. People can have jobs for a long time. They're not going to be part of this booming. They're just going to be constant.
That is 4 minutes. All right, so now we are moving on to the rebuttal portion. The Republicans will be posting their rebuttal first, and their time starts now.
All right. First to the earthquakes. There's very little evidence that earthquakes are the reason behind fracking. They're actually There are small earthquakes, 10,000 times less powerful than a 3.0 magnitude earthquake. There have been earthquakes going on in the east from before that. An earthquake in 1937 in Anna, Ohio, 5.2 on the Richter scale, has nothing to do with fracking. There was no fracking back then. Water has been on, you've been able to light water on fire forever. I said naturally occurring methane has always been in water from methane migration. There's a fountain in Louisiana that they dug, and there was naturally occurring methane down there, and it was forever on fire. That was back in the 30s or 40s, I believe. And George Washington and Thomas Paine in 1798, I believe, they caught a river on fire in New Jersey somewhere. I don't know where the river is, I forget, but companies pay for the restoration, so there's really no effect on the environment. And there's concrete casing. There's no water mixing in with the groundwater. The actual drilling that they're doing is the groundwater is right at the top of the earth, the ground surface. And the drilling, they're doing it thousands of feet below ground. And they're actually doing horizontal drilling, so they don't have to actually go through that much water anymore. They actually take their pipe down, and then they do it horizontally drilling, which they can actually get a lot more shell, gas out of it. There's been no real reports of acid rain, and you said that it's not a very expanding industry. There's 410 trillion cubic feet of natural gas in the Marcellus Shale. 750
Okay, that is 2
trillion
minutes.
US.
And now the Democrats' rebuttal, and your time starts now.
I'm not sure how many of you guys are, keyed into understanding how the fracking system actually works. And some folks might be a little bit delusional about the environmental aspect of the damages that it has on our ecosystem. And so let me just break it down to kind of what it's about. The new system of fracking requires less water. But where are we getting that water from? It's our clean water. We have less than 1% of water on this earth that we can use for drinking. The runoffs of the chemicals that come up from the ground gets deposited into nearby streams, killing fishes and damaging the soil, which many farmers depend on for agriculture. So that part about it's safe and the shifting going on. I've taken a climatology class. The shifting going on down there. If you get enough fracking underneath the bed of rocks, you have miniature eruptions of volcano eruptions that does occur. With that being said, when you have industries, companies coming in, fracking, they bring in massive trucks that plows through thousands of acres of forest. That alone impacts the ecosystem. Just to kind of go forward, I'm kind of on a split decision because I really care about the environment, and I do see the profits in the jobs opportunity. But as my member Matt here stated, is we can't look at this as a short term, but we have to look at this as a long term.
2 minutes. So now we move on to the question portion. There have been questions posed for both sides. Since the Republicans were posing a question in the last iteration. I'm sorry. Yes, there's the closing statement, and I'm very excited about the questions. So, Republicans, your closing statement starts now.
All right, I want you to all imagine life without energy. What would you do? Energy is everything in our lives. Just remember that. The people living in these communities, they know that it's not affecting their environments, their water. People in Demick, PA, that everybody thinks Demick's such a terrible place, you can die if you go there. No, people in Demick, they love it there. It's amazing. People in Wayne County, they want the drilling, they know it's going to save their farms. And back to what they said, 1% of our water sounds like a scary number. That is still a lot of water. Our drinking water isn't going anywhere. And if you think about what I said just now about energy, we need to use a little bit, if we use a little bit of water to get a lot of energy, this energy is lasting for 20 to 40 years in wells. Well, 20, 30, 40 years. That's a lot. It's only about a 100-day process to do the drilling, 3 to 5 days doing the hydraulic fracturing, which is actually what they call the fracking process, where you put the water in the earth, and 20 to 40 years of energy. That's a lot of energy, and we can become energy independent off of it. And there's so many jobs that are arising out of this. There's just there's really no negatives to the environment or the economy by doing this.
Okay, 12 seconds left. And now the closing statement from the Democrats.
Since 1933, the mainstay of the Democratic Party has to employ those who are underemployed or unemployed. Right now, Pennsylvania is sitting on at least 50 trillion cubic tons of natural gas, more natural gas than Saudi Arabia has oil. And as you said, there is a potential of over 200,000 jobs just in fracking, not including how that may spread out to the community. But fracking does come with some risks. There is no guarantee that the safe drinking water won't be affected, whether it's as they drill or later, because what they do is they, to ensure the pipes, they put cement pillars around them. But cement cracks quite a lot. We've seen it all around, especially when we drive. And the fracking fluid can leak up. And fracking fluid, can't be cleaned in a contamination plant. And if you drink it, you'll effectively die, which is not good at all. This can kill anything from wildlife to your pet dog to you. Now, while I think that the good does slightly outweigh the bad, we need to realize that natural gas is a finite resource, and it's not going to be there forever. And it just has to be a short-term gap while we start funding green energy, which is far more efficient.
And that is 1 minute and 30 seconds. So now we actually move on to the question portion. If all closing statements have time has expired. So this question is from Jonathan Miner, and it is posed to the College Democrats. And the question states, Solyndra was a green energy initiative and it failed drastically. What clean energy reform do you propose for our future? And your time starts now.
Sure. That is something that is still on the horizon. We have many ongoing research projects happening across the country within universities, such as the windmill. We have solar energy. We have products out there, as we know, the hybrid cars that they're starting to come out with that are running not on gas. But again, the underlying secret to the madness of why we're in the 21st century, and we have the technology and we have the capacity to build a greener, smarter economy. But it comes down to is the dollars. Can you imagine wiping out the entire country and having a landfill with piles of vehicles, running on gasoline and oil? Do you know that what that would do to Texas? People would lose their jobs, and people are not essentially ready to hear about these innovations of green systems that we have set up. And until we get serious about having a real discussion, there's been research out there that actually advocates that we have the energy to power this whole entire economy. But it comes down to companies wanting to put their hands in your pocket and continue to short-term 20, 30 years of jobs. You go through communities.
And that is 2 minutes. So we move on to a question posed to the College Republicans by Jim Walters, who asks, to Republicans, wouldn't it be better for job creation to implement more green energy sources?
Wait, can you state that again?
Yes, to Republicans, wouldn't it be better for job creation to implement more green energy sources?
Well, we've tried putting in green energy resources. We're trying to do our solar panels, and I just said that statistic of Chinese resources where we're using tons and tons of rare earth materials like copper to build one. And they're taking up lots of land. Windmills are killing birds. They're not exactly the best idea. Right now, we're trying to work with what we can with getting jobs and powering the economy. We're using natural gas to get us through. And until someday we might find this green energy that's really going to power the economy. But until we can do that, we need to work with what we have now and continue to invest in the future. We can both agree that we need to invest in the future, but we have to work with what we have now. And there's plenty of jobs in the natural gas economy. I already threw out the statistics, and it's just right now that's the best option. It's the cleanest. It's the cleanest.
It's not clean. It's not clean.
It is clean, but there's statistics on our side to say that it is clean. It's not affecting water. I've already told you about natural resources, like natural methane getting into it. And there's not as many processes as building these other things like windmills where you have to throw carbon dioxide in the air with building metal, like all this metal production and everything. We already have the drill rigs at the sites to get this natural gas that's already given to us, God given to us. We're sitting on the Marcellus Shale, and that's great.
I just want to say real quick, it's not the cleanest. The cleanest is coming from the sun. It may be clean, but you said solar energy is the cleanest. It may be clean, but you said it's the cleanest, which is not true at all.
And at what cost?
Okay. We have entered a new part of this debate in which we're rebutting the questions. So, if you would like to restate that, I will put 1 minute on the clock, and then you will have a minute to rebut, and you will have a minute to rebut the rebuttal. Does that sound fair for each?
Wait, who's going first? I'm confused.
You answered the question, so
Answer
they
the
are going.
question?
Yeah. So they are going to rebut, and then you can rebut the rebuttal.
All right, thank you.
No, great, no problem. And rebut.
I was just correcting the fact that, yes, it may be clean because you're not releasing 25 times more carbon dioxide, which methane is 25 times more toxic than carbon dioxide. But I'm just saying it's not the cleanest. The cleanest is solar and wind energy because, it's coming from the sun and the wind. That's how it's powered. They're not going anywhere for billions of years. I'm just saying that's the cleanest. Yes, natural gas may be clean, but it's not the cleanest. I was just saying that, unless you'll have a rebuttal.
Can I steal some of his time? Is that
Yeah,
okay?
20
Good.
seconds.
Good. We got to be concerned with wildlife, and if you want to be on this planet for another 200 million plus years, it may seem like a temporary fix, but it's going to destroy our ecosystem.
And that's 1 minute. 1 minute for your rebuttal.
It's not going to destroy our ecosystem. Just going back to your wind energy. One windmill powers about 300 homes. Natural gas powers a whole city. These windmills, they have to take up a lot of land. Like, that's still disturbing peace with people that are living there. These natural gas rigs, they're coming in for that certain little amount of time. There's the 100 days, 50 to 100 days when you're doing the drilling. Then there's the 3 to 5 days where they're doing the hydraulic fracturing. And then it sizes down to about a two-car garage, what it sizes down to. And they rasterize the thing. I already said that the solar power, they're using tons and tons of copper to build these things. Yeah, you make the solar panels and then they're clean, but making them, that's much dirtier than fracking.
And that is good.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, so we are moving on to our final question, which concerns Congress lowering interest rates of student loans. As the Democrats won the coin toss and it is their turn for the opening statements, They will start. So the question is, should Congress lower the interest rate for student loans? If so, how should it be funded? And if not, why? So, the College Democrats, your 4 minutes starts now.
Sorry, there's a little confusion going on over here. You know, I'm a student here at IUP, Indiana University of Pennsylvania, and you know, I don't know how many folks have student loans out, but I do, and I'm concerned about justice. And when I speak about justice, I mean, if you and I can walk out and get a car loan, get a mortgage loan, based on our credit report and how well we pay our bills and we follow regulations and whatnot, why can't we treat student loans with the same tactic? We are paying already for higher education, whether it's through government funding, whether it's through taking out loans through the banks, but to add on interest rates and continue to have them increasing. The Democrats have been fighting hard to get them lowered. And back in 2007 to 2008, they were about a little over 6 point something percent, and we're slowly making our way back up to that 6 point something percent. Right now, it's like 3.8%. And just a matter of a few months ago, that was part of the ceiling debt of one of the government shutdown, and folks were, you know, particularly your party was upset with us. I guess my question is a rhetorical one. Do you have student loans? Would you like to spend the next 20 years paying off just interest rates on your student loans, or would you like to be able to actually pay off of the amount that you borrowed? If we can negotiate interest rates on everything else, why can't we negotiate interest rates on student loans? I don't think I need 4 minutes for this. This is a very straightforward question that can be easily be resolved if we actually took the time and heard each side out and figured out a way to ethically resolve this without lobbying for something that's outrageous like this.
Okay, with a minute and 13 seconds left, the IUP Democrats, finish their opening statement. The timer is reset and your opening statement starts now.
Thanks, Dave. College students across America are struggling more and more every day. The recent spike in the cost of student loans is at record heights. I see this as more of a bipartisan issue rather than a Republican issue or a Democratic issue. This is an issue that affects all millennials and not just one party. Going back to the summer of 2013, Congress needed to act before July 1st before loan rates doubled. Unfortunately, Congress failed to act and loan rates jumped from 3.4% to 6.8%. However, Congress finally passed a bipartisan bill that tamed the loan rates that were spiraling out of control. The College Republican National Committee recently released a report entitled A Grand Old Party for a Brand New Generation. In this study, they talked to young voters to see why they voted for President Obama or Governor Romney in 2012. A young voter speaking on the Democratic Party said, "I think they're doing more in tune to what we need right now, with student loans, getting a job, fixing the housing market, and the environment." This is where I disagree with the statement. I feel that the Democratic Party isn't helping the job market get any better. We can't talk about student loans without talking about job creation. If we don't have the jobs after graduation, how are we going to pay off these student loans? It's just not going to happen. You know, every first Friday of the month we hear what the job report is, 6.7%, 6.8%, whatever it is. But does anyone know what the unemployment rate for people our age is?
Yeah, it's about 7%.
It's not 7%. It's 14.5%.
That's if you don't. That's only if you only graduated high school and have no college experience.
But that's still people our age, though.
So it sounds like,
Okay, well, we're gonna let them have the time and then I'm gonna
I'm sorry.
Thanks, Ed. We spend all this money for degrees, and we come out of college either being underemployed or not employed at all. Job creation is directly linked to this, whether you think it's not or whether you think it is or not. You know, I'm not just saying this because I'm a Republican, and you know, Republicans have been for a while job creators, whereas the Democrats have been job killers. If you look at when President Obama was elected in 2008, the House and Senate were both controlled by Democrats. And during that time, unemployment across the state or across the country rose to nearly 10%, with youth unemployment being nearly 20%. When Republicans took back the House in 2010, the rates began to drop. One solution to this student loan problem that has been backed by the Democratic Party is income-based repayment. Basically, the amount you pay each month is tied to how much you make in a year. This way, loan repayments will be able to fit within their budget, and their payments can be made. But the problem with this is that if you're a low-income individual, how are you going to pay off? It's going to take longer to pay off these loans than if you have
Common sense, right?
We're agreeing with you. With that.
You're not going to be lifted out of that burden, though.
That's why we need the interest rates to be lowered.
We'll just give them their time.
College students need to be held responsible for the money they take out. You know, you go out into the real world, you're not going to be able to get no interest rates. That's just not true. You have interest rates on everything. Well, I completely agree. Interest rates should be low. I don't know how low you want them. I'm sure you don't want interest rates at all. But I don't think that's a solution, and I don't think that teaches young Americans what it's like to be an actual adult and not just have everything handed to them, low cost or free.
And that is where we are.
Jay, I'd like to see that statistic on 7% too, because I believe that's a bunch of crap.
Okay,
With
well,
all due respect.
we can check statistics afterwards. We will move on to the opening statement of the rebuttals to the college Democrats.
I just want to take a second to discuss what you said. Democrats are job killers. Since 1960, there have been more Republican presidents than Democratic presidents, and about 68 million private sector jobs created, with Republicans only creating 22 million of them, and also having higher population growth during them. So if you want to talk about job creation, Democrats create jobs. Keynesian economics create jobs. It's been proven. Now, I am one of the few people to be lucky enough to not have a student loan. And I feel very fortunate about that because I know not all my friends have that luxury. But with higher student loan rates, it's almost like telling a middle-class family or a working-class family that you might have to put off college in a couple of years. And in this day and age, college is not a privilege anymore. You need it to get a job. Like it was stated earlier, it's 14.5% if you just have a high school education. It's 7% if you have a college education. And obviously, as you get more degrees, the unemployment rate goes down. But we have to look at this as a macro issue. The future of America can't be settled with more debt than all of America has credit card debt. It is astonishing how high the student loan debt is getting. And I personally think that the interest rate should be tied with inflation, maybe plus 1%, because we need to invest in the future, and we can't tell a poor or working class family that you have to put it off for 2 years because you can't pay the student loan back 6 months, start paying it back 6 months after you graduate. And to go what you said, if you
And
are...
that's 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And now for the Republicans, your 2 minutes starts now.
You said that Democrats are job creators. proven that they've created jobs over the years. The control of Congress from the 1940s through 1994, Democrats have controlled the House and the Senate. So you're saying that Republicans being in control, maybe as president, not creating jobs, is completely false. Come on, Jay.
Just
Yep, no, go ahead.
You know, I'm actually going to give it to you. Republicans, you guys created jobs when Bush was in office for 8 years. And oh boy, was things glamorous. And what happened when what happened?
It is my
What happened when
it is his time.
Well,
He
it
wants
is.
to respond.
But when Obama entered the presidency, he had a crap to clean up after.
Jay,
So
do
thanks
Jay,
to
do you
your
know
party,
what the unemployment
thanks to
rate?
your party, right?
Let's give him, he's trying to talk. Let's give him his time.
Do you know what the unemployment rate was when Bush was in office?
At its lowest or
It
its
was
highest?
low.
At its lowest,
It was
highest,
low.
Let's give him his
or
time. Let's give him his time.
It averaged around between 4 and 5%. Only towards 2008, at the end of Bush's term, did it begin to rise. But it has doubled from what it was when Bush was in office. You can't keep blaming that on Bush, and this seems to be a common Democrat tactic. Bush has been out of office for like 5 years now.
Yeah, it's going to take about 20 years to fix it. In eight years of that time,
It wasn't Jim K. Let's give him, he's trying to talk.
I mean, I know this is talking about student loans, but I think it brings up a point from what you just said, that we're now $17 trillion in debt, and this has been created in Obama's economy.
Bush doubled the debt. It was
Okay.
even more than it was
trillion.
five. It was
All
5
right.
billion.
The time
5
is
trillion.
up. And we'll move into closing statements. If you'd like to use your closing statements to rebut each other's arguments, that's completely on the table. We are moving into this, and to keep everything moving along, we move into the closing statements for the Democrats. So, the Democrats, you have 1 minute and 30 seconds to close your argument. I just reset the clock. And
So basically, what we want to come down to is to realize that the student debt is steadily increasing as a problem. Interest rates need to be lower, and that's the end of the conversation. You wanna keep increasing interest rate, but yet we took us this much to raise minimum wage. I've been working since last semester, and the amount of money that I got over a semester isn't gonna put a dent into my loan. So the problem isn't necessarily jobs. The problem is the minimum wage, which I need to fix. The problem is the interest rates that y'all keep increasing and increasing. It doesn't make sense for me to be able to get a car loan or a credit card and that interest rate lowers over years, but I can get a student loan and it'll keep increasing until even after I graduate. It doesn't make sense to me. So I think we should stop focusing on the job market, focus on the people who are actually struggling. We talked about the Affordable Care Act. We mentioned there's not enough doctors. There's not enough doctors because people can't afford to go to school to be a doctor. So maybe we need to focus on the real issue here, and that's the money. I need to start looking at the lower income and the middle class families and start being a little bit more sympathetic.
okay, we have 21 seconds left on the clock. And now the Republicans, you have 1 minute and 30 seconds, starting now.
You raise an interesting point with the minimum wage. Being in college, I don't know what college student has a nice, comfy job, not making minimum wage. We don't go to school to get a minimum wage job, so I don't think minimum wage needs to be tied to student loans. And even if minimum wage were to be, if we were to raise the minimum wage, all that's going to do is just raise prices, and you're not going to be able to get out of it. People aren't supposed to have minimum wage jobs for their entire lives.
So how are we supposed to pay back the debt that is keeping that steadily increasing?
I don't want interest rates to go up. I'm a student too. I have student loans out. I don't want us to be spending more money, but we need to have it that students need to be responsible for their debt. I heard a student the other day in the Oak Grove, and this is a true story. He was talking to a friend about taking out a student loan. He said he just had to take out another student loan to cover his tuition for next semester. But he also said he took out an extra $1,000, $2,000 so that he could purchase some new Air Jordans that were coming out in the fall.
How can you say that you want students to be responsible for the debt, but you're saying students shouldn't get jobs?
I didn't
Oh,
say
I'm sorry,
students
they
shouldn't get
should
jobs.
minimum wage
Students
jobs.
can get jobs
They
after
should get
graduation
minimum
because there
wage
are no
jobs,
jobs.
which are the only jobs that are available on campus or surrounding areas for college students. If you want to make them responsible, give them the opportunity to be responsible, which means increase minimum wage, so they can get enough money to pay back their loans.
I'm extending the time to let this play out.
It's economics. If we raise minimum wage, it's only going to hurt the middle class. It's going to hurt the other classes because prices are just going to raise. There's a reason stuff set it what it is. We have to let the economy play out. It's called free capitalism.
Yeah,
If you want to talk about raising the minimum wage, it should be raised via inflation rates. President Obama has a plan that he wants to raise the minimum wage to $15. Well, that's just not going to work. I mean, you know, I would raise it. If you're going to raise the minimum wage, you do it in slow increments, you know, to adjust to inflation. You don't do it all in one big gap. That's all I'm saying.
What Obama proposed was $10.10 an hour, and also they've done studies where if you increase minimum wage to about $10.10 an hour, you'll create just purely off that 60,000 jobs because people will have more money in their pockets, and also if you were to pass the prices through the consumer, 100% of the prices, I think a Big Mac goes up 4 cents. That is not like a huge price increase. That's something you don't even notice because most people pay to the next dollar. So instead of a Big Mac costing, I don't know how much they cost, what, like $5? $5.04. That's not that big of an increase. That's actually insanely minuscule that it's laughable to say it increases prices so much that it won't matter.
I don't know where you're getting that statistic at, but it's not going to go up 4 cents. It's going to go up a lot more. If companies have to pay their employees at least $10.10. Companies are struggling now to pay their employees minimum wage. The economy's still not good. Small businesses are going out of business. The $10.10 minimum wage is going to hurt small business in America.
Economic studies prove you 100% wrong.
Well, I would like to see these studies because that's the first time I've heard that.
It's just going to lead to more workers being laid off. Companies are going to come in, the McDonald's company or whatever the fast food company is, and they're going to lay off workers to cut costs. So that's what I mean. If you want to if you want to just take the minimum wage and minimum wage and raise it to $10.10 an hour, that's what's going to happen.
well, it seems so surprising because, you know, corporations are constantly making money, even when the economy is so bad. And what's more surprising is the lower income folks are always the first class to suffer. I agree. I think that to a certain degree, we don't solve the issue by giving a free handout. But when the cost of living is higher than the dollar per hour that you make, that you end up, like many students, taking out loans,
Put 4 minutes
taking
on the
out
clock
loans
to allow for this.
to
and
live.
4 minutes is up. So we're going to end this
That's a
discussion.
problem.
We're going to end this discussion with the 4 minutes that was put on the clock, and now we're going to move on to questions posed by our audience in the fairness, in the vein of fairness, to keep this simple. So, we have a question from Kurt Neal to the Democrats. And Kurt Neal asks, would it not be fair for banks to attempt to make a profit on the gamble of a loan through the interest rate?
Of course, that's not fair. That's why we got rid of them. Now, universities, students can now obtain a loan directly from the government. The reason why they got rid of the bank's middleman, is because students were ending up having to pay the insurance on the banks and pay the insurance on the loans, and there's all the shenanigans and people, government had to pay them. No, you get rid of the middleman, and the government steps in and he levels out the playing field, the cost. And that's what we're talking about here. You want to make things affordable, you cut back, you scale, you stop living this extravagant lifestyle, you stop looking down and saying, well, geez, why can't they just go get a job or why can't they go to school? It's because you're making it tough for them to do so.
Okay, and there's a minute left on the clock. If you want to use that minute to rebut his statement, that is fine.
What was the question again that was posed?
The question was, would it not be fair for banks to attempt to make a profit on the gamble of a loan through the interest rate?
Going off, you said it was unfair for banks to make a profit.
On student loans, yes. Yes.
Okay, how's that any unfair than credit cards, car loans, home loans?
It's an unnecessary expense. The banks get their money from the government already. That's where our money is backed up by the government. And the government is lending the money to the banks so the banks can lend it to us, to the students, and there's interest rates being charged consistently from that system. That's a poor system.
But how's that fair to the banks that they can't make a profit off of this?
Because this is not a luxury.
I think
Education, going to college, because that's where our society is in the 21st century, this is not a luxury. This is a survival to meet ends. This is not going out, well, I need $100,000 to build a home.
I completely agree with you. I don't think college is a luxury anymore. I mean, you're definitely right. You need to go to college in order to have a successful life. But I don't think that other people in the banks should suffer because they can't make another profit off of this. I'm not advocating because, like I said before, I have student loans out. I don't want them to be as high as possible. But in fairness and in free markets, we can't have the banks suffering because you guys think it's unfair for students to have to pay more when. And going back to my original point, it's still teacher responsibility because when they get out of college and now they've had no interest rates and they're paying just exactly what, now they take a loan out on their house, they're gonna want to have no interest rates on homes, no interest rates on cars. It's just gonna keep snowballing down the hill, and eventually it's just our generation is not going to learn.
I think you're missing the point though. The government is already taxing students, so we're being responsible by paying our dues. But when a bank is making a living, a profit off of something that's already being taxed, that sounds like a scandalous setup for collecting an extra cash fee for nonsense.
It's not nonsense.
It's nonsense.
It's not.
And to top that off, our government has already gotten rid of it.
Jay, if we'd like to be talking about whether it is nonsense or not nonsense, it will have to be continued after the debate. This concludes the IUP collegiate debate. If you have any further questions or wish to get involved in either organization, the College Democrats can be reached through Jay Carter, whose email is j.e.carter@iup.edu. And for the College Republicans, they can be reached through Caleb Bennett at k.m.bennett@iup.edu. Thank you for your attendance and your questions. Have a good night.